First of all, let's look at patterns. So this particular pattern was actually generated in Illustrator, and we've already looked at creating patterns in all different sorts of ways in Illustrator. And this particular one was made, in fact this one here and this one here, was designed using the pattern maker. So there's already a video for that in week 10 called Pattern Maker, and then there's a bit more in another video in the same week. So go and have a look at that if you want a refresher on how to use that particular method of making patterns. But remember, we also used the transform tool, we've used pivot point. There's all sorts of ways in Illustrator to generate patterns. I would like to focus in today on using Photoshop to actually generate patterns, either simple patterns or more complex patterns, and we're going to take a look at that. So that's where we're going to start with using some objects. This is the actual flat plan that I've given you, and so you can use this, but bear in mind all the necessaries that need to go onto the flat plan as well. So your background image, your background or your patterns have to work with all of this stuff as well. And you need to create a logo, and you need to leave that space. This particular space here is for the sell by date. So you must leave an area of white somewhere on the back of your packaging in order that the client can put a sell by date on. So let's start by making a pattern. So let's say I wanted to create a pattern in Photoshop. It's really easy, but then there's lots of ways that you can work with that pattern. Before you even start, you need to think about the thing that you want to put in the pattern. So it could be an abstract design, could be a photograph, it could be a combination of photograph and illustration, it could be a silhouette. This is the Illustrator lemon that we made, or it could be one of your drawings. It could be an image borrowed from the internet, but the caveat is that if you do use imagery from the internet, you have to have a good reason for using somebody else's work. So the good reason for this is it might be quite difficult to get an image exactly how I want it. And a graphic designer wouldn't necessarily take the photographs anyway. So you're allowed to use something like this. I would like to see you at least experimenting with different possibilities. So I put it through different filters, looking at the pixelate filters and some of the art filters as well. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with this creature here. So the first thing to think about is whether you want a background color straight away with your patterns, or do you want your pattern to have transparency? So for instance, this particular strawberry would have transparency. It's transparent beyond the actual strawberry, whereas this one has got a white background, or it could have a coloured background. In order to make a pattern with a transparent background, you need to make sure that you've just switched everything off. Just make sure you see a transparent background. And if you don't, if it's still got a white edge, you need to get rid of that. You need to delete it or mask it, and then you can create an image with a transparent background. So I'm going to draw around my strawberry, just a rectangle, and it has to be a rectangle. And I'm going to say Edit, Define Pattern. You can give it a name if you like. I've got a few of these strawberries already in my patterns, but this is the newest one with a transparent background. So I'm going to deselect, just let's have a white background in again. I'm just going to lock and switch off these just so that we don't have to look at them. And I'll lock this as well. Let's create a fresh layer. So the different ways that I can now work with that pattern, well, there's several. First of all, I could fill the entire layer. So I can take my paint bucket and choose my pattern. So normally your paint bucket says foreground up here, and that would mean your foreground color. So if I just tip it in, I get the purple. But you can choose pattern instead. And again, I can choose the patterns that I've been making. So I can choose my transparent strawberry. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is, just so that you can see it's transparent, I'm going to create another. So basically, I've just filled another layer with a colour, and I'll pop that up there so you can see my strawberry pattern is transparent. That's one way to work with it. Another way is to create a selection. So this could be your chocolate bar, for instance. And we can pour the same pattern, choose the pattern and pour it in. But I have a little control, not very much control this way, over the scale of the pattern. So that's a bit of a problem. You can transform, so I can transform it, but really we want to be able to control the pattern in situ. So if this was my package, then I want to be able to fill it and be able to adjust the scale of it. Now, I can do that using pattern fill. So it's a layer style. That involves you double clicking, same way you would get a drop shadow, a bevel, and in this case a pattern overlay. But the problem is the secret's in the title. So if I say OK, nothing happens. Okay, it's because there's nothing in the layer. A pattern overlay has to overlay something. So again, I'm just going to bin this. I need to put something in there. So it can be a color, for instance. Let's just put in that purple. Oops. Go back to foreground color, put in that purple again. And then, so instead of using this pattern tool up here, I'm going to put the pattern in through the pattern overlay. When you're using styles, always remember it's not just the tick. Okay. You know, you naturally set up here by default, and if I just simply tick it, I'm not in the controls for the pattern. So I need to come down to the controls, and then you can adjust the scale of the strawberries. You can also choose a different pattern if you wanted. And of course, you can see the background color because our pattern is transparent. You've also got blends, so you can ask your strawberries in this case to blend differently with that color. And you've got opacity too, so you could make the strawberries more transparent. So that's quite good. We can control the scale and we can control the opacity. So that's a possibility. There is a third way, and that is, it's quite an exciting route to take because it gives you an ability to transform the pattern even further. So I need a fresh layer, and I'm going to say Edit Fill. Now, unfortunately, the one problem is we don't get a preview on screen. Okay, so basically what I've got is the fill. We can choose colors to fill. Background and foreground colors are the same as these. Content aware I'm going to come back to later on in the year. But we're going to fill it with a pattern, and you've obviously you pick your pattern here. Let's just check it's the right one. And then you have a number of variations. So you can explore these. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me just look at cross weave. It's quite a nice one. And I'm going to say OK. And I go into this dialog box. So you can see cross weave is quite nice because it creates a varied pattern from my original strawberries. I've got scale. Let me just take out this. Okay. So the pattern scale allows me to increase or decrease the size of the strawberries. I can put spacing in between or pull them close together, even overlap them if I wanted to make them a bit bigger so you can see the overlap better. You can see strawberries are overlapping. And you can also introduce colour randomness into the scenario, which is really quite nice. So you get this kind of blended colour. And then you also can vary the brightness as well. So if I say OK to that, it's going to fill this with my strawberries. The only sad thing is we don't get an actual preview of this. But that's the third way to work. So you've got your paint bucket with pattern, you've got your double click with your colour overlay, and then I think probably most interesting, you've got your edit fill. And I'm going to just try it again. So we'll try a different one, spiral. Okay, you get this kind of thing. So you can explore all of the other ones there.